In 1954, the greatest mountaineering achievement was completed. And I'm not talking about the scaling of Mount Everest. That was done, of course, the year before, in 1953, by a British expedition led by Sir Edmund Hillary. I'm talking about Mount Godwin Austen, better known as K2, the second highest peak after Mount Everest. K2 lies in the Karakoram range on the border of Pakistan and China, 900 miles northwest of Mount Everest in the Himalayas. Its name derives from the fact that it was the second peak in the Karakoram range, surveyed in 1856 by Thomas Montgomery during the Great Trigonometric Survey of British India. While ascending the summit of Everest is itself no small feat, the technical skills required compared to K2 are much less. As Alan Arnett has said, it is mostly walking on moderate snow slopes attached to a fixed line. Now, K2 is in fact much more dangerous, and scaling it requires greater technical climbing expertise. The weather conditions, especially at the peak, are more severe, and K2 is much more prone to avalanches and ice falls than is Everest. In 2008, 11 climbers were killed at the spot on K2 called the Bottleneck, giving credence to K2's nickname as the Savage Mountain. Now, reaching the summit of K2 is an achievement well worth celebrating with a postage stamp. And, indeed, one was issued, but not by Italy. The first and only stamp to be issued immediately following the conquest of K2 came from Pakistan. Now, it's entirely appropriate that Pakistan would issue a stamp, as K2 lies on the Pakistan-China border and the ascent began on the Pakistani side of the mountain. But what about Italy? Where is their stamp? After the completion of the expedition, a controversy arose, with infighting erupting among the members of the expedition. To understand why, one need only look at the two lead actors in the saga, the expedition leader Ardito Desio and the lead climber Achille Compagnoni. The project had been organized and controlled with military discipline, and team members had to swear an oath of allegiance to Desio, who ran the show as an iron-fisted autocrat. Desio treated almost all of his climbers with contempt, getting along only with Compagnoni. Compagnoni, for his part, he felt contemptuous of the youngest member of the expedition, Walter Bonatti, who, along with his Pakistani porter, Amir Mahdi, was tasked with bringing fresh replacement oxygen cylinders and other supplies up to the lead climbers as they neared the summit. At just 24 years of age, Bonatti was the youngest member of the expedition. However, even with only 5 years of major climbing experience, he was already ranked among Italy's elite climbers. Compagnoni, somehow apparently threatened by the abilities of this young upstart, somehow got it into his head, possibly with the encouragement of Desio, that Bonatti was attempting to sabotage the mission and was going to try to reach the peak on his own. At his age and in his physical condition, Bonatti could have reached the summit without even requiring supplemental oxygen. And on their last camp before the summit, Camp 9, Compagnoni and his co-lead, Lino Lacedelli, set up at a point 250 meters higher than they had told Bonatti they would be, and in a particularly dangerous location. This was done, it was learned later, to foil any attempt by Bonatti to overtake them when he brought up the final sets of oxygen cylinders. Unable to locate the lead climbers at the designated spot, and with the hour growing late, Bonatti and Mahdi were forced to set up an emergency bivouac out in the open. At morning light, Bonatti and Mahdi, the latter of whom had developed severe frostbite overnight, descended back down to lower camp, leaving the oxygen sets for the lead climbers to retrieve. Compagnoni and Lacedelli retrieved them and then reached the summit later that day. With the mission accomplished and everyone back at base camp, accusations then started to fly. Compagnoni claimed that Bonatti brought him oxygen cylinders that were not topped up, and that they ran out of oxygen before they reached the summit. Bonatti disputed the assertion, saying that he had brought them the German Draeger cylinders, which were blue and had a capacity that lasted 2.5 hours longer than their Italian red cylinders. In fact, 39 years later, in 1993, a photograph came to light showing Compagnoni standing on the summit wearing his oxygen mask and still hooked up to his oxygen cylinder. Although at first glance, while this might appear to vindicate Bonatti, there's a couple of reasons why this is not proof that Compagnoni still had oxygen at the summit. For one, even today some climbers will keep their mask and hose attached after they've run out of oxygen, because at least that will warm up the atmospheric air that they're now breathing before they, suck it up. And two, another photograph at the summit shows that there was also one of the lower capacity Italian cylinders. So you can see how this just all became a matter of he said, and no one can prove whether Compagnoni did indeed have oxygen at the top or not. And in the aftermath of the climb, the whole mountaineering community took up sides with Compagnoni or Bonatti, with Bonatti really getting the worst of it, and he actually got ostracized from the mountaineering community. In fact, a book written by Ardito Desio, the expedition leader, completely omitted any mention of Bonatti's contributions to the expedition. And the war of words got so bad and so public that the Italian post office, who had already designed a stamp and had gotten it through the proof stage, just threw up their hands and says, "You guys figure it out yourselves, we're out of it." And they withdrew their plans to issue a stamp. In 2004, Pakistan and Italy both released issues marking the 50th anniversary of one of mankind's greatest physical achievements. Pakistan produced a beautiful souvenir sheet of 2 stamps with photographs of K2 from base camp taken in different seasons. As for Italy's 2004 stamp, one can only say that a more unimaginative design would be hard to imagine. Over the 50 years after the climb, more books were written, more lawsuits were filed, and an investigation was started by the Italian Alpine Club, under whose auspices the K2 expedition had been organized. And in 2007, 52 years after the historic achievement, the CAI, the Italian Alpine Club, revised the official account of the expedition, denouncing the alleged mutiny by Bonatti and acknowledging his considerable contributions to the success of the mission. Walter Bonatti succumbed to pancreatic cancer in 2011 at the age of 81. But it's heartening to know that he did live long enough to see himself vindicated. Today he's widely regarded as Italy's greatest alpine climber and ranks alongside the greatest climbers the world has known. Thanks for joining me today in this stamp story, and I hope you'll be with me next time. Until then, this is Ted the Talking Stamp Collector wishing you all happy stamping.